Hello and welcome to Business Today. I am Siddharth Zarabi and you are joining us from the India Today Business Today studios at the World Economic Forum here in Davos. And with me, to my immediate left, Shobana Kamineni, the Executive Vice-Chairperson of Apollo Hospitals. After her, Mahendra Singhi, the Managing Director and CEO of Dalmia Cements. And then Arjun Dhawan, the Group CEO of HCC Ltd. Thank you very much for joining us here on this panel. The backdrop to this discussion on India's investment potential, and all three must have been in meetings with a lot of foreign investors. This is the first in-person meeting of the World Economic Forum after the pandemic, and all CEOs who are here would have got a sense of how the world is looking at China. At India, beg your pardon, in the context of what is happening in China, world security, Russia, Ukraine, inflation, food prices, the mix is very potent and very volatile. Shobana, I'm really tempted to ask you about healthcare in India, but I'll leave that for later. But you, as someone who's been here in the past, and now again we are having this in-person meeting, what's the central message that you are picking up vis-a-vis India specifically?
I think that while the rest of the world is handling their own stressors, and I'm hearing the word exacerbated much more, after pandemic, they're saying that it's exacerbated by the Ukraine, by, political instability, inflation, all these things. Somehow when they think about India, they say that there's a story that is unfolding. So there's some amount of optimism that here's a country that did, vaccines. We were out there. We have almost 8 different vaccines. So in the pandemic story, definitely something to be told. There's a strong state and central presence out here and Indians everywhere. So everyone is saying, hey, what's going on with you guys in India? And even if you look at The Economist, when I spoke to the chief editor, she said, you guys, this is the time that you can actually accelerate. And there's so while I see that the stressors, I'm never hearing the word hopeless. It's always hopeful. And I think that at the second word of that would be India.
Ajit Gulabchand was on the same chair as you yesterday, and he's a 30-plus year veteran at Davos, and he said that there used to be a euphoria around India, and he believes that it's tapered down a bit, but that's his point, if India gets its act right once more, there is perhaps logic in China plus one. Arjun, I am coming to you. You observe business, you yourself have operations here, and obviously you have a global footprint. What's the central thing that you feel, if it was done in the Indian context? For example, over the last 3-4 days, we have had a fuel excise cut. We've restricted sugar exports. We've done various other things for controlling our own inflation, and these are inward-looking steps. There has been some criticism of that as well, but we have a huge mass of the global population to feel. What would be those key things that you feel could really enhance India's investment potential appeal?
So first, India finally has an infrastructure program that it deserves. 1.5 trillion is planned to be invested in the next 5 years. And if India is to actually be part of the Committee of Nations, we need to admirably execute that. And our track record thus far has been very, very strong. In fact, we've decoupled from the world a little bit in terms of having exercised really wonderful fiscal constraint during COVID-19. We didn't print a lot of money. Instead, we actually invested in long-term yielding assets like infrastructure, and that's what's generated that nearly 9% GDP growth this past year, which will continue to be sustainable in the next couple of years. Now, as an emerging market, we're the 6th largest economy in the world, 3rd largest on a purchasing power perspective. India has historically largely been built by Indians and by Indian businesses. And I think that we have our challenges, but alongside we have those massive opportunities, not just for Indian businesses, but for the world. And we have a unique opportunity today as we create infrastructure and we plan not for the next 5, 10, but for the next 50 years to be able to attract those partnerships, which we so very importantly need in terms of best practices as to how we execute that. Now, there's many challenges. And I'll focus on two in the context of the current discussion and infrastructure development. One is to have adequate risk sharing between the government and the private sector.
You were referring to government agencies changing their mind mid-contract or post-contract.
No, that's consistency in policy. I'm saying that when you actually look at government contracts, you look at a public-private partnership model which has been immensely successful in India. The word partnership tends to actually get diluted, and I think that is fundamental. Second is fundamentally contract enforcement and speedy dispute resolution. I mean, bedrock of any capital economy is, and I think the government and the Prime Minister are especially very keenly focused on some of these dialogues are continuing in this regard. And by the way, the WEF is an important basically engagement partner in some of these. So I tend to be very optimistic, perhaps more optimistic than my father-in-law has actually seen many more cycles than I have. But I do believe that we're certainly on the right track, and the twin variables that the global economy faces today, which is the war in Ukraine, as well as this unwinding of massive liquidity that's happening with central banks around the world, and the Federal Reserve is clearly late in that regard. I think India should actually weather those quite well in the next few years.
Mahendra Singhi ji, you manufacture cement.
Yes.
And that is the bedrock of all the ambitions that we can. हर घर पक्का हो, अच्छा हो, हम स्वस्थ हों. But cement के prices पिछले कुछ दिनों में बढ़े भी हैं. My question really is that in all of this is inflation and cost push pressure coming as a big challenge, because we thought 2 years of pandemic, we will come out of it and start growing, and the common man will once again have some relief. But inflation seems to be cancelling all of that out for the masses, if not the classes.
Yes. So first I would say we do make happiness material, which is cement, because by cement you make homes, by homes you become happy. And at the same time, inflation does impact people, but at the same time, it also impacts cement company, steel company. And if you look at inflation of fuel prices, mind-boggling, we never seen. And then if you look at the inflation which has happened in the cost, which also one should appreciate, then maybe 40 to 60 rupees a bag. And if you look at price increase, which might have happened at one place or other place, it may be ranging from say 5 rupees to 15, 20 rupees. So the point is that still cement companies have been able to absorb the cost increase, and that's why you would see.
You are not making profits. You are not looking at it only from a profit motive. Is that what you are saying?
Profits of cement companies have reduced. And because of inflation, it hits everyone. But at the same time, the cement companies of India are quite innovative. And that's why they have been able to manage to some extent. But if you look at the results, you will find net profit margin have gone down badly.
So sir, my next question, if all cost input increase were to be passed on, how much would you have to further increase a bag of cement?
It would vary from place to place, company to company, and it's hypothetical because it may
average
not
बता दीजिए सर, ये आपके तो numbers बिल्कुल tips पे होते हैं.
Yes, but it may not be practical to share that. Okay. But at the same
you are
time,
not giving me a headline.
Yes, but at the same time, I am saying that the good part which we find in Davos is that the whole global community is able to pose confidence in Indian government,
Yes.
Indian entrepreneurs, and also they are calling certain Indian entrepreneurs ecopreneurs. It means that certain sectors, CEOs or corporates, they are showing more concern about environment also in addition to economy.
We have to remember what Singhi Saab is saying is about cement, and remember, cement cannot be imported. You can't bring huge quantities of cement, at least the quantities that India needs from overseas. It is a Atmanirbhar industry and it has to be healthy.
And the reason why it is not imported is that cement cost in India is the lowest. That's why it is not being imported. Otherwise, there is no ban.
Arjun.
So let me point out on a lighter note that what's happening here is actually forcing us to innovate further, which means that now we try to use less cement by using fly ash in our concrete. But a serious note, I think that I think that the government would be well placed to actually have a large procurement program. And this would not just be for large businesses, but for SMEs, because as we've seen supply chain disruptions in the world, and by the way, India, I think as a destination ends up being a fantastic alternative to some of the issues that we've seen in supply chains around the world. The biggest concern is job creation, which tends to happen 90% with SMEs. The question is whether they're going to get...
So what are you saying? You are saying that the government should give you 3 to 5 years, not you in person as a company, but industry, 3 to 5 years of order booking clarity, that this is the amount of procurement that would happen, for example, for the National Roads and Highways program. Is that what you are...
Something along those lines, to be able to have a predictability in prices. I mean, clearly prices of commodities are frankly unsustainable at this point in time, and many owners and government clients are appreciating this. Others are not. But I do believe that there has to be a balance here.
महेंद्र जी, कंपटीशन कमीशन क्यों नाराज रहता है आपकी इंडस्ट्री से, और सरकार के बड़े मंत्री भी नाराज रहते हैं?
I think they are the right people to answer.
Okay.
But at the same time, we are doing our best to serve our consumers. And if you find that India is the only country which is producing more than 70% low carbon cement, it means we are already on the road to ensure that, yes, we become climate friendly. And as far as Dalmia Cement is concerned, it is already working on its carbon negative roadmap. So point is, the philosophy, clean and green, is profitable and sustainable, is making us to manage the cost also, and at the same time good quality, and take care of the globe also.
That's a very important point that Singhi Saab is talking about here, because environment sustainability is one of the themes among Russia, Ukraine and inflation, which has been prominent here at Davos. Shobana, I'm coming to you. A torrent of judicial decisions, regulatory changes in various sectors, and upward push in the cost of capital. In these three, what would you describe as the biggest challenge or risk factor in the next few months and quarters?
In healthcare or for every...
For overall.
For all sectors, I do think it's at this point, it's the cost of capital. Because we've been used to an easy regime of capital, and I'm hoping that that regulatory, we understand where we are at this time and what's happening. So in terms of a government, we have complete stability, lots of clarity, and even throughout they're not shy to say anymore that India needs strong business for us to create more jobs. So everyone is aligned on that. But when the cost of capital goes up, because right now what India needs is huge investments. When we're looking at investment into everything, healthcare, for instance, needs $150 billion of investment in terms of its infrastructure, in terms of digitization, and all the other.
And where do you see that amount of money coming from?
Now that's the thing. How much can the private sector do? So we've been saying that the government needs to step up spending. By at least, they're spending about 3%. They need state governments, and the center has to spend probably double that for infrastructure. But even if we start working on certain schemes that would reduce the cost of capital for us, like some states are saying, okay, we'll give you land, things like that. We need to find creative alternatives. Yesterday I was on a session, with Queen Beatrice and the managing director of IFC, and we looked at blended finance. We should have sectors like healthcare need to have social bonds. Then we need to have.
Are you saying that the authorities in India, both at the state and central level, have much more to do and perhaps have not absorbed all the lessons that the pandemic have taught us in terms of building healthcare infrastructure through massive investments?
Come on, that's a little cruel.
Okay.
I think that they did. Can you imagine giving the number of vaccines free? No country in the world has given it. So I think that we got way more than we asked for from the government.
Okay.
Right now,
so
we're all in a
the
construct
of two Indias when it comes to healthcare.
What does that mean? I think that all of us have to be inclusive. We have to keep costs down. We have to, every Indian, if I'm an Indian, it doesn't matter what I am. I have to be able to get, if I need an open heart surgery, I need to get it. And that's what Ayushman Bharat does. You can get it. You can choose which hospital, but you'll get it, see? And the quality is good. But what we need to do is to ramp up the scale, because there are more and more Indians, 30 million diabetics, and then it's going to the largest cohort of NCDs in the world. So we need to start planning, just like you're planning roads and you're saying $1.3 trillion for infrastructure. This is health. So we need to find...
That was really my question, that if roads are being given such priority, why not think of ways to finance, if not to that extent, at least half of that number?
I think it's a very good discussion, and I'm happy to say that all the participants should sit around the table and they are, like they're having their dialogue. So I wouldn't fault, it's a state subject. So state after state is thinking, what can I do to be more inclusive? Center is thinking, what can we do to keep our population more healthy? And they've done more in terms of their scale than any other country. And, we're solving for 1.3 billion.
Yeah, it's a small number.
Yeah.
I have one more question, and this is slightly different. As one of India's top healthcare executives, is the pursuit of a zero COVID strategy sensible?
No, for sure not, because that's unreal. It's like saying, zero flu, because now it's become endemic. I really think that we need to be sensible. Masking is important. What I've seen around the world is we don't need to be so free. We need to have masking. We need to have medicines in place. We need to have the right education so that people can handle it. So zero COVID, never happening.
Well, that question was really in the context of what is happening in parts of China and the resulting supply disruptions. Arjun, I'm coming to you on your own assessment, and we come back to the government's plan on infrastructure spending. Do you think dispute resolution as far as the highways sector is now very stable and provides confidence to Indian and other investors to invest in that sector? Because we saw several disputes in the past.
So certainly the quality of the contracts and concession agreements is vastly improved. Mr. Gadkari is a taskmaster, likes to get things done, but fundamentally the dispute resolution mechanism is independent of any particular sector. You have the Arbitration Conciliation Act. That process, through the last amendment, has now actually become time-bound. So by 12 to 18 months, you need to finish an arbitration. But the issue fundamentally is that matters continue to get challenged mechanically in court, and India doesn't have a punitive system for frivolous litigation. So in other words, there is no incentive.
Particularly by government agencies.
So government agencies are certainly one of the largest challenges. I also think, independently of this, that we have an excellent set of bureaucrats. I think their hands could definitely be strengthened if the decisions that they took were upheld, so the commercial decisions they took weren't scrutinized to the extent that they are, and there's always this fear of investigation because of collusion between public and private sector, and I think that holds back a lot of the courageous, bold decisions that, frankly, government needs to make. But we do have a long way to go. I mean, our court infrastructure is coming apart at the seams. And we look at the pendency of cases, not just for arbitration, commercial disputes, but for
even a time-bound special law for insolvency and bankruptcy has seen delays beyond what was even specified in the law itself.
We need to have 10 times that infrastructure. I mean, I think that we were talking about infrastructure. The fact is that the technical and strategic capacity within our system to implement all of this is impossible. I mean, take for example, we're building 18,000 kilometers of just road network a year, and this is on top of being the second largest highway network in the world. That annual target is the size of most European countries' national networks. We're replicating them on an annual basis.
That's a very good number to keep in mind, the size of India.
So we're talking about a magnitude that is at another scale, and so effectively you require that support, you require that capacity within government to execute. I want to spend a second, to talk a little bit about urban infrastructure, right? So, as India urbanizes, it's fundamentally important that our cities, which are also to some extent crumbling because we don't have master planning that happens, state governments and state agencies typically take the responsibility to plan and execute, but the planning and execution should also be given to the local authorities. The mayor of Bombay is a ceremonial.
You are absolutely right. I think the biggest next wave of reforms has to be municipal reforms, because that is where all the urban living issues and problems are coming up.
Plan 50 years out. Can't just be
in our budget.
Go ahead, please.
Our budget addressed some of that, and I completely agree with you in terms of what you say, that we don't have enough technical, whether it's town planners to be able to, spend on that. New York has 10 times the number.
Even preventing the same road being dug up 5 times.
We still have not
by
solved
different
that problem
agencies
of the wastage.
But let me tell you one great example of municipal transformation. I was recently in Indore, one beautiful clean city,
it has won awards.
and then on this pleasant surprise that the health problem has come down by more than 30%. And when I checked up with the municipal commissioner, because I'm hearing from 3-4 people, then she said that one, we have worked on cleanliness. Second, we have worked on sewage treatment. Earlier, water used to be mixed up and everything. And she also confirmed.
नलके का पानी भी साफ है अब.
It
yes.
can't be prettier than Hyderabad.
Let me come to Hyderabad also. But the point is, transformations are happening. It is also based on the people also. It's just not, rules are same in every municipal corporation.
Singhi Sahab, to ask you this question, when I came here and you do a double thing, because someone tells you, oh, you can just have the tap water, and we are so now used to not having tap water in India that it feels strange if someone says tap water is fine. I believe that Mumbai and perhaps some other cities used to have that. Do you think a time will come soon where we can just open the tap in Delhi and have tap water instead of bottled water, which has its environmental consequences?
If we plan, it will come. But we are not targeting at the moment. Since,
Why? Why are we not doing that?
Maybe our priorities may be different. But, many villages in the country might not be getting the water also. So the way the government and the Minister of Water is working on it, and I think
rural
this is one of the
water के लिए तो बहुत काम हुआ है.
Yes.
You see pipes happening. We are talking about urban, where
urban,
people are even paying good sums for water.
In urban, it should happen. Only thing is that one has to target. Whole thing is, in our business also we have seen that whatever is target, we can achieve. And that's why we say in Hindi, जो सोचे वो पावे. Whatever you dream, you'll get it.
And since we are talking about dreams, as I wind down this conversation where we have sort of gone over some pain points as well, and I tried to push the panel in my own way, let's sum it up, and I come to you, Shobana. 2022, a year of challenges globally, and we had all thought 2022 New Year, the pandemic is behind us. How do you see this year and the next year panning out? Also from your own business point of view, because that will give us a glimpse into overall confidence of India Inc.
I think over the last 2 years, the lessons we've learned, and healthcare, any other industry that we're in, will be applied, because the situation in the world is not, you're not going back to fantastic efficiencies in supply chains. You're not looking at lower cost finance. All these things, this is the world that it's a cycle, and we lived with it before this.
It's a world that is fragmenting, economic fragmentation.
And so we need to strengthen our own systems. And I think even in healthcare, we'll continue to double down. But one of the big things that I've heard two things that I've heard at Davos this year. One is the appreciation of the fact of the digital inclusion in the financial inclusion in India through UPI. I've heard it in the 3 panels I've spoken in, has been praised. And I think that this has given the confidence for us to be inclusive as we're doing.
As they say.
So that to me is a big one. The second thing that I'm hearing is that as the world ages and as the great resignation that people are looking at, while manufacturing is super important, it's services that is going to drive a huge number of good paying jobs, not only in India, but the rest of the world. And we double down in Apollo Hospital that it'll be healthcare that is foundational. So if we can get through some of the choke points in being able to skill people, so this great skilling that we can do in India it's a win-win, provides more jobs for Indians. And if we can work towards sending them across the world, they want skilling now to have different languages in it. Teach them German, of course, great English skills. So this is an opportunity, I think, for in healthcare for sure. I'm sure other sectors, but we will double down on the services that we're in and be hopeful that growth will continue. And India will be the fastest growing economy for some time to come.
And I will say here to that, Arjun, the same question to you. And then final word with Singhi Sahab.
No, I agree with that. HCC is very privileged to be part of this incredible infrastructure development story. We haven't spoken about technology. I think it's so fundamentally important. It's changed the way our industry actually plans, executes, reduction of wastage, better design capabilities, and frankly then allows for structures to actually be lighter, thereby leaving a lower carbon footprint. I want to re-emphasize how important it is to de-bottleneck some of what we've talked about, because then what that does is it reduces substantially the cost of building. We're still building expensive infrastructure in our country, and I think that is something that is very immediately addressable, and I think we're going to get there soon enough.
Sir, the same question to you.
Yes. We are quite confident about India's economic growth, and particularly FY23 and FY24, the way government is pushing, except the concern about the inflation, things should go well. As well, India should be also working in a big way on climate actions. The way Modi ji had, committed for 2070 roadmap for carbon negative and net zero carbon, and then the 500 gigawatt target for renewable energy, and then bringing down CO2 emissions by intensity by 50% by 2030. I think the government's mindset has also changed, and this is what I have seen, and I've seen the leadership of Yadav ji, then Gadkari ji, and Goyal ji, that the way they are leading. And let me also tell you that the corporates who are coming up to support this, like under the leadership of Senator John Kerry and World Economic Forum, they have created first mover coalition, in which first time we were the two founding members in 19, and then now more and more members are joining. Now today, yesterday it was announced by Goyal ji and Senator John Kerry that the government of India has also joined. So they are also working on how we can encourage green technologies and green products. So I'm quite bullish about everything. Only message which I would like to give is how we can take care of our youngsters, how we can show more love about youth, so that, we start taking more action on climate. Thank you.
And the point about climate, if sometimes we feel that there's a lot of science and, jargon thrown at us, every time someone says climate change, when you look at unseasonal rains wiping off hills and causing flooding, when you see this immense early heat wave and the impact it has had on India, that is climate change, and that is real for us. It is not a foreign problem. It is not overseas. It's happening all across India, and the poor are those who actually suffer the most, because they do not have the resources to insulate themselves against that difficult climate. I'm going to thank my entire panel for what was a very nice learning opportunity for me. Thank you, Shobana. Thank you, Mahendra ji, and Arjun. A pleasure talking to you. With that,
thanks to you also.
Thank you. And with that, it's a wrap on this conversation. If you've been, thank you very much for watching.
If you like the video, do like, comment, share and subscribe.